Hey, everybody. It is 49ers, Cowboys, Sunday afternoon at Levi Stadium. Doesn't get any bigger than this. We're going to break it all down. Jack Hammer, Rob Shue, next on the Hammerhead Show. Hey, everybody. It is Thursday night. That means it is time for the Hammerhead Show. We're here on my channel. Usually we do this night on Rob's channel, but we're over here tonight. And Rob, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, Jack. This is bringing back childhood memories for me of 49ers Cowboys. There was no more hated rivalry than the Cowboys in the 90s. I remember distinctly that 94 game, how sweet it felt. And I still feel that to this day. The Seahawks have moved up in their hatred meter for Rob Shue, but the Cowboys are still right there. So to have gone up against Seattle, sent them packing, and now have an opportunity to do the same to Dallas, forget about it, Jack. Forget about it. That would be so sweet.
Absolutely. You know, I started watching the Joe Montana documentary again night before last. I never finished it the first time I went through. I had stopped somewhere around episode 4. I don't know. So I went back to, it was the mid 80s anyway, and that stuff started getting me fired up. And I remember 1981, that game. I was just a little guy. I was like 6 years old. I was telling my girlfriend this story the other day. I remember I was supposed to stay at my grandparents' house. My parents had sent me over there for the night. I was supposed to stay over there. It was all good until the news came on and they showed a picture of Candlestick Park, and they were getting like the pregame like stuff, you know. And this was the night before the game, like Saturday night, right? And I started whining, and I was like, I need to go home. The game's tomorrow. I got to get in. And next thing you know, my grandparents are calling my parents to come and pick me up. And all about a game that was happening the next day, you know, almost 24 hours later. But I was at me at like 6 years old, all fired up to go to watch a 49er game on TV, not even go to the game. But then
at 6 years old, you understood the importance of this rivalry, Jack. You had a notion of just how serious this hatred was between the two teams.
Well, I think it was that I got so fired up because the grass was the stadium, and it had those red end zones that you never usually see. And I think that's what it was as a little kid, just to love the way the field looked and everything like that. And I do remember it was a big game. I remember them scoring the touchdown and the excitement in my house. And it was just me and my parents, and I think my older brother might've been there at the time, and everything there. And then everybody's excited. And I remember they kicked off, and my dad's like, calm down. This game's not over. This is the Cowboys. We've seen this happen too many times, because he'd already lived through the 70s and those disasters, right? So, you know, I got baptized into the 49ers Cowboys early on. And I was going to send this out as a tweet, but you know, if you're 30 years or younger, you don't really know what this is about. You've heard about it. You're kind of starting to live through it because you went through the game last year, but you're really just kind of starting to get a feel for it. And really, what I would say, you miss those glory years of the 49ers, and you're reliving it, I think, right now. We're going to get into the game, and I'll explain maybe a little bit more of why I think you're kind of living through a rebirth of what we saw in the early 80s.
I agree. And it was something that was said on my channel in the call-in show just a moment ago, was to be appreciative of what it is we're watching right now. It's one thing to understand the history of it. That's fantastic. It adds this phenomenal backstory. For guys like you and I, it adds a layer of emotional investment into this game. I will tell you that in a negative outcome, I will be crushed, Jack. I mean, crushed. But in a positive outcome, I will lose my mind in a very positive way. But to be appreciative of what it is we're watching right now, take all that history out of it. Even without that backstory, what we're seeing between these two teams coming in, specifically what we're seeing from our franchise, the San Francisco 49ers, this year, what happened last year, what happened in 2019, these are special teams that 10, 20, 30 years from now, we will look back and talk about this era. To me, it's so important to realize you're in that moment right now so that you can truly appreciate it while it's happening.
Yeah, this hadn't happened before when we were going through it in the 80s and 90s. But now that you and I are older, we've been through it. Kind of letting those younger guys, and somebody over here told me I was 68 in the comment section. I'm not 68. I'm closer to the first guess, but I'm definitely not 68. But that nothing wrong with that. But I'm not 68.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Gray in my beard. Real quick, let me just shout out a few folks. We got Raphael 5629ers, member of the Toolbox. That's what he's got the dollar sign there. It says good evening, Jack, Rob, members of the Toolbox, and everyone. Hey, Raphael, good to see you. We got Alan Elizer. Says Jack and Rob, happy Thursday. Let's go Niners. Happy Thursday to you, Alan. PA Niner fan 78, 87. He was in the house early as well. We got Lucas Pesci coming over from Austria. He says, good morning, Jack and Rob. Lucas, also a member of the Toolbox. The Stivers 209er show. He wants to see the Niners take on the Giants. Sounds like he might have been at the game the first time for 2012. I lived through those Giants games. Let's not get into that. And then we got Giovanni Suarez says CMC will run for 375 yards. Randall Riley, another Toolbox member, says, let's go. Raphael comes back in. A little bit more 200 all-purpose yards. Let's see what else. We got Nikki D, Peter Lee, 916-9er. I'm trying to get through all of them because you guys are awesome. That looks like about it. We got Faithful since 1946. I think he's the one that called me 68. I could be wrong. Who knows? But let's just get into the show. You know what? Wanted to talk about this game and go through and really break it down. I wanted to start off on the defensive side of the ball too. I think the defensive side of the ball is going to be extremely interesting with the way that this game is going to play out. I think 49er fans are looking at this game as one that might be tough, but they kind of, I think, feel like it's going to be a little bit easier game than I believe. And let's put this one up here first. 49ers run defense versus Dallas. When you see that matchup, Rob, what are you thinking?
I think this is the most important matchup in the game. I think if the 49ers are able to stymie Dallas's run game and make Dallas into a one-dimensional offense, that has a domino effect. That means that all of a sudden we're going to be able to get after Dak Prescott. That means Dak Prescott is going to have to move his feet, probably be unsettled in the pocket, probably let some errant throws go. And we have seen over the course of this year what that tends to amount to for the Dallas Cowboys, and that is a turnover-ridden game. That feels like the key to success for the 49ers. Get in there early, establish those 8-man boxes, make sure that Kinlaw and Armstead are feasting on the run game, that the pass rush is very coordinated such that it doesn't allow for the rushing lanes for Dak. Because I think Dak has those sneaky wheels on it. I see this one as the most important. And I do wonder, Dallas has two high caliber running backs as to whether the 49ers are going to be able to limit Dallas in this area.
Yeah, this is for me, I think the biggest piece of it is because there's a lot of pieces. This is one of them. When you look at the 49ers and what the games in which they've struggled this year, there is a common theme, and that is the ability of the opponent to run the ball, whether it's with the quarterback scrambling around or the running backs running the ball. That is the theme throughout all of the losses. It's even the theme through a couple of close games. The game against the Raiders, that running game was a big piece of what was going on there and why the Raiders were able to put up 34 points on this team. They were able to we saw it last week with Seattle, specifically in the first half, even in the beginning of the second half, where they were able to be, they weren't even balanced. They were over run heavy. And you look at those, and I think that's the biggest issue. And you look at a Dallas team who they learned, I think, because Dak Prescott was out for a few weeks, they learned that they are best when they are giving volume to their backs. And that's why I posted on Twitter today the comments from Mike McCarthy yesterday, where he talked about, it's not so much the overall number, it's about the efficiency of it and these guys getting their carries. I think really what he wants to do is he wants to get as close to 30 carries as possible combined between Ezekiel Elliott and Pollard. And I just think it's going to be, that is the focus. And that's where the 49ers, if they don't stop the run, this is going to be a long day for them.
If McCarthy is honest about that and he's really telegraphing the true game plan where he's old school and he's like, hey, strength against strength, right? Like, you may know that we're attempting to run all over you, but it's what we do. So we're going to do it anyway. Does that play in the 49ers' advantage? If McCarthy is a bit more old school, immediately comes out, attempts to establish the run, I have to imagine that the 49ers are prepared with a defensive package that is aimed at limiting the ability for Dallas to run. Do you think that plays in our favor?
I think what you're going to, I think you'll probably see them come out and play action and boot and those kind of things right off the bat. I think that's what you're going to see is, they're going to try to establish the run, but they're also going to be using some pass off of it too. And that's where the 49ers are in trouble with this in this game, if they do get into trouble, because you have Dak Prescott, who's a mobile quarterback, but he can beat you from the pocket as well. And he looked pretty good the other night. I know it's Tampa Bay, and a lot of people are saying it's a bad Tampa Bay defense. Forget about the fact that they did it against Tampa Bay. This is what Dallas has been doing all season long. It wasn't just Tampa Bay. They are a very balanced team, and they're going to try to run the ball, just like the 49ers will want to come out and try to run the ball. They're very similar teams in that way. And you're right. They need to take this game. One of my questions for the game tomorrow is, can the 49ers force Dak Prescott to beat them? I said that last week, with Geno Smith, but it's the same thing. And it's going to be the same. I'm going to ask the same question if they win this week and they go up against either team next week, is can they make that quarterback beat them? Because when the 49ers make a team one-dimensional, that's when they dominate. But they've got to get you to be that way first, especially teams that have balance like what Dallas has.
Have we played a team that's as dangerous in the run game as the Dallas Cowboys? With Zeke, with Tony Pollard, and with Dak's legs, have we come up against anyone that really compares to that three-headed rushing attack?
The Atlanta Falcons would probably be the closest. They ran for 150 yards. And then the next one would be the Las Vegas Raiders would be the next one in terms of that pounding kind of a running, right? I think the Vegas with Josh Jacobs, and you had Jarrett Stidham, who nobody really knew a whole lot about, but he was deadly with his legs in that game. I think that's where you have you have to look at it and say those are the examples that you have. I know that there were a few guys missing in the Atlanta game, but still that's happened even when those guys were here. Now, when you go back to Las Vegas in week 17.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely struggled in both of those games, obviously losing to Atlanta and coming close in a shocker against Las Vegas. I think you're right. And it's also fair to say that Dak is a much better quarterback as far as throwing the ball than either of those two others. So while we're talking about the run defense specifically right now, I think it is fair to point out that even if we're able to stop the run, this team has more weapons at their disposal than those others, and we struggled in those instances. I was reading the article that you put out on the Press Democrat today, thought it was fantastic in pointing out that it is against those teams that have success running the ball where the 49ers have struggled this season, and that seems to be the type of matchup that we're headed into on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so, and it even goes back to Sunday against Seattle, right? Against Seattle, like I said, they came out in the first half. They were 18 called runs to 13 called passes. They were a little overbalanced over on the run side. And you saw them have success. And they were using two backs. They were using DJ Dallas. They were using Kenneth Walker. Walker was their primary, but they were using Dallas as well. And they were having success. They were especially having success running to the side opposite of Nick Bosa. Especially they're running to the left side when Bosa was on the right. We saw them have a number of good runs in that direction. And so I look at this, and this is now two times in 3 weeks where we've seen a team that's want to come in and run the ball on this team, and they've got to be able to they've got to do a better job of being able to shut that down, because if they don't, this is a Dallas team that can take advantage of it.
In your film review of the Seattle game, did you see a notable difference between when it was Samson Ebukam or Charles Omenihu out there on the opposite side?
No, I didn't really notice it there. They just were doing a really good job of heck, Seattle's has a good offensive line, and they were doing a very good job of getting a hat on a hat, and then but Niners defenders couldn't get off the blocks to get to the guys. The only guys that, like I said, the only one that I really saw shedding blocks and making plays was Bosa. Javon Kinlaw had a nice one early on in the game, so it was. But there was a lot of catching in that game for the 49ers defense. So I mean by that, they're not getting to the guy until he's 3 or 4 yards downfield. We saw that a lot in the first half.
Man, between the three, before we get off of this rush attack for Dallas, between Zeke, Pollard, and Dak with his legs, which one should the Niners fear the most?
Tony Pollard.
I agree. It's that speed.
Pollard's I think a guy he's probably going to be the main back. And you'll have Elliott will be in there too. Elliott, it seems like they're going to both get their carries, but Elliott's been struggling a little bit more recently. He's only averaging about 2 yards a carry over the last 3 weeks, I think it is, or something like that. Pollard has more of the explosion, but you're going to see those guys bounce off of each other in terms of, and they're going to be on the field at the same time at points too, because they have that flexibility like what the 49ers have. So I think this is going to be a really interesting. I put that out there, and people didn't. I don't know if people really quite got what I said, but I put out the McCarthy quote, and I said the 49ers defense needs to have their big boy pads on, and I understand they're a good defense, but what I meant by that is this is going to be an extremely physical game, and they need to be ready for it.
Yeah, I think it is different to be the aggressor versus when a team is attacking you in that way. I think the Niners are used to being the aggressor, and this is the flip side of that, wherein they have struggled at points this year. This, again, to me, is the key to this game, is how this plays out. Our run defense being able to contain Pollard, Zeke, Dak. If we're able to, it feels like it sets up everything else to work out nicely for the 49ers. If not, this game feels wide open, and it could be a shootout that comes down to the last team to possess the ball.
Correct. Very good. But we'll get into that a little bit as we get it later on. Randall Riley says Zeke gets 3 to 1 carries, guys. That's incorrect. Ezekiel Elliott gets, on the season, the regular season, 231 carries for Elliott, 93 for Pollard. So they're almost balanced. There's not a lot of difference there. We're talking about maybe 2 carries a game difference. And in listening to the radio today, listening to the guys from Dallas talking, it definitely sounds like they are starting to lean a little bit more towards the Tony Pollard because of where they are now. Let's think of it in terms of 49ers, right? You don't necessarily want to see them running Deebo Samuel in between the tackles a bunch during the regular season. Right. In the playoffs now. Do what you got to do to win the game. And I think that's kind of what the Cowboys have been doing with Tony Pollard, especially in the second part of the year.
And it would seem right to follow the hot hand, right? And to your point of Zeke's averages the last few games and the last game wherein you had Tony Pollard 15 carries for 77 versus 13 for 27 for Zeke. If you're riding the hot hand, it's Tony Pollard right now.
It is. And then, I think we've talked about the run stuff. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about on that. I would switch over to the pass defense, because I think that the two go together, right? You get that run game going, and that's where the pass defense struggles with the 49ers. Is they're good when it's 3rd and 8, and they're going to throw, and you can get your down lineman and you can go. Where the 49ers struggles when it's a play action pass kind of a situation. That I think is where they struggle against the pass a little bit more. They don't do a very good job against screens. We've seen them struggle in the screen game. We've also seen them struggle a little bit in the short play action game. We saw it a little bit on Sunday. We saw it against the Raiders with their tight end. And Dallas has a very good tight end in Dalton Schultz, which I think, he's not Darren Waller, but he's good, and they have a good backup behind him as well. And then you have T.Y. Hilton on the outside. He's the older guy, but CeeDee Lamb is the main guy as far as the receivers, and they also have Michael Gallup. So this is a Dallas offense that can take you and stretch you vertically and horizontally, which makes it really tough to defend. And there's not very many of those in the NFL, as you would think.
No, and Dalton Schultz, to your point, is not the physically gifted athlete that Darren Waller is, but he has that ability to find the soft spots in the defense and sit down. He's one of those headier tight ends, right, that may not be as physically gifted, but seems to be able to find those open spots. It's intriguing to me, that statistic about the 49ers defense. It was pointed out to me on Twitter. David Lombardi put it out, where every other down, whether it's first down against the rush, first down against the pass, second down against the rush, second down against the pass, third down against the run, or third down against the pass, in all but one of those categories, the Niners are top 4. But in that third down against the pass, they're mid-20s. I think it was 23rd ranked there as far as our defense versus the opposing offense on third down when it is a passing down. Do you believe that is influenced by those third and medium distances, that if we can keep them into third and long, we're not a bad third down defense, but it is when we're in the middle ground there, when they have the option to run or pass, that we're hurt the most?
That's always the toughest, is when you're in that spot. And that's where it was really impressive early on in the game on Sunday against Seattle that the 49ers were able to have some success there, because if you remember, Seattle on those first 2 possessions got into 3rd and 2, and the 49ers were able to get the stop. And that's the situation where with Dallas, you would expect that to be a lot tougher because 3rd and 2
Right.
is a down that you should be able to pick up. And they started doing that after those first couple of possessions. Yeah, I think it's more of the 3rd and 2. I saw that number from a few different people today, and I looked it up, and the 49ers on 3rd down, in terms of 3rd down conversion percentage allowed, the 49ers are like 18th in the NFL. Cowboys are like 12th. So there's a separation between the two, but the difference is about 0.5%. One of them's like 39.8, the other one's 39.3 or somewhere around there. So it's not like they're on the bottom side of it, but it's not like they're awful.
The ranking may be misleading as to the difference between someone who's in 10th place versus the Niners defense where they're at.
Yeah, and I don't know how the whole DVOA thing works in terms of, are they being efficient and picking up first downs? Is that what that's about? Or is it about their, looking at it and this offense is, picking up yardage and they're getting to, having a positive play on it and all those kind of things. So I'd have to dig into that a little more. That's one of those things where people talk about it. I don't talk about it a lot, and part of the reason I don't talk about it a lot is because I don't understand it completely. So that's why I don't bring it up.
Complicated algorithm. Did you see last week's game by Mooney Ward as one of his worst of the season? Was that your takeaway from that one? To me, it felt as if he was in close position on a couple of those where he got burnt, but things did go DK's way. And I think it's fair to ask that question. Was that one of his rougher games?
It was, it was one of his rougher, and that he gave up the 50-yard touchdown pass. And then he also got, the one missed tackle where he got spiked into the ground. I mean, those were two bad plays for him. But overall, when you look at the totality of the game, I thought that he played, despite those two errors, he did a pretty good job throughout the game of keeping everything in front of him other than that. And we saw DK Metcalf, he had the 50-yard completion, which was a big deal early on. But for the rest of the game, the 49ers did a really good job of keeping them in front of him. He picked up some first downs, but they weren't. Seattle, other than the one throw, really didn't have an explosive pass play that I can remember.
And I loved how D'Amico Ryans continued to trust Travarius Ward, that, he's not giving up just because of those couple of big plays. He's not giving up on the ability of him to match up against DK. Do you believe that this ends up being one wherein Mooney Ward is shadowing CeeDee Lamb, or stays primarily on one side of the field and whomever the Cowboys put up there against him is who he faces?
This one's going to be interesting because CeeDee Lamb is at his best when he plays inside. So that's what's going to be interesting about how this works out for the 49ers, because Lamb is best in kind of that second or third receiver. I mean, the 2 or 3 receiver spot, which means he's not the outside guy. And so it's going to be interesting to see if the 49ers decide that they want to bring Travarius Ward inside, or if it's going to be Jimmy Ward that matches up. Because last year it was K'Wan Williams that was matched up on him. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to go about that.
Absolutely. It felt like when you had Amari Cooper along with CD, it felt like a much more dangerous 1-2 punch. I would argue that as far as wide receivers go, you've got to do whatever you can against CeeDee Lamb, because he feels like the most dangerous weapon aside from the running game and Schultz.
Well, he is. But he is he's their main guy in terms of their passing game. That's what 156 targets. He's almost 60 more than the next closest, more than 60, almost 70 more than the next closest person on the team. And then you get into Noah Brown and Michael Gallup, who are all the way down at 74. So think about that. CeeDee Lamb, 156 targets. Their next closest wide receiver is at 74. There's a couple of those guys, and you have Dalton Schultz is second on the team at 89. So slowing him down is a big piece to it, and that's where picking up T.Y. Hilton helps them. Hilton's not a guy that I think you worry about beating you deep, but he's a guy that can. T.Y. Hilton, I think, is more along the lines of who is the receiver from opposite of DK Metcalf? I'm blanking on his name right now in Seattle.
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett. So I think T.Y. Hilton is kind of like a Tyler Lockett right now, where he's just that underneath chain mover type of guy. Tyler Lockett, he's a funny guy to watch play because he catches the ball. He wants no part of contact. And so
he goes down. It's phenomenal. I love it, dude. He's like, no, thank you. I don't want to take a shot right now.
Yeah. I've had enough.
I think I will be falling to the ground right now.
Exactly. Real quick, I want to hit this super chat from Kevin. He says, Jack, Dak will look to throw long, short, and then mid before taking off. Can see a Bosa sack while he goes through the motions in the first half. that's going to be a big piece of this game too, is that that's where the 49ers, typically win, right? Is their pressure on the quarterback, which leads to their turnovers and those types of things. And that's where this defense is at their best.
Yeah. Do you see, I think I read today, may have even been from your article, talking about Dak Prescott has not had 2 clean games in a row this year with 0 interceptions. Clearly did not throw one last week. Do you believe he is due to toss one to the 49ers? They have been turning the ball over at phenomenal rates. Dak seems to enjoy giving the occasional one away. Are we destined for an interception in this one?
I mean, if it seems like it, right? Yeah, I tweeted that out earlier today because we're looking at all these different angles to try to talk about, and that's definitely one of them. Because Dak Prescott last year this is the worst year he's had in his career, I think, in terms of turnovers, in terms of interceptions, and so he's really been struggling this year with it. And he's gone through multiple weeks where he's had an interception. I think he's like almost 4% this year in terms of interception percentage, and that's we have people it's 3.8. And when Jimmy Garoppolo was in the 2.5, 2.6 category, people were losing their mind. So if they can get a turnover and they can force a turnover there, I think that's big. And you mentioned something that I put out earlier today, the Cowboy article that I wrote. And what I would say on that is the whole key to this on the defensive side might not even be the defense. It might be the offense, because if you go back to the game against the Seahawks on Sunday, that game was extremely close. Remember now, the 49ers got up by 10 points, but Seattle didn't stop doing what they were doing. They kept running because they were only, they got down by 10, but they scored right away to make it 10-7. And then it was 13-7. I think it was, and then they took the lead 14. So they never had to get out of it because they were never down by two touchdowns in that first half. And so they were kind of always in the game. So that allowed them to keep running the ball and playing their game, and you saw them move the ball. Even it wasn't until the first possession of the second half, and it's 20 points now, 23-17, but they stick with their game plan and they drive the ball just a little bit at a time, and they get all the way down to the 49ers 14-yard line, and they complete a pass to Lockett for 7. So they're going to have 3rd and 3 at the 7, and you get the holding penalty. And then they just started backing up. And then because of that penalty, they are able to now be in a 3rd and long situation. And guess what happens when they're in 3rd and long? I don't care about the numbers that David put out earlier. They're in 3rd and long. That's when it's time for Nick Bosa and company to eat, because that's when they're able to pin their ears back because they know it's not going to be a run. And that's when they're at their best. And they get up the field. Bosa gets a really nice rush. You have Charles Omenihu right there, able to come off of him, gets to the quarterback, knocks the ball out, and Bosa falls on it. Niners score a touchdown, go up 14. From there, it's Niner ball game, because they have now, with a 2-touchdown lead in the second half, the Seahawks go completely away from the run game, and it's Niner ball game the rest of the way.
Let me just ask you, this is a little off topic on the game, but should the 49ers prioritize attempting to re-sign Charles Omenihu? Is he potentially that guy that could be opposite of Bosa, that we don't need to go out and find in the draft, that we could just pay right now?
I don't know about opposite of Bosa all the time, because they really like to bring him inside. To me, he's kind of like this year's he's this year's version of Arden Key, right? Right. So I think when you look at this, at him, he is a guy that I would love to see brought back, because he is the guy. He is one of those guys you want to have Charles Omenihu or Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw, and you want that to be your interior 3 rotation. You want Nick Bosa to be your starter on the outside, and maybe he is your starter on the outside, or you have another pass rusher, or Drake Jackson, however Drake Jackson.
Right.
I don't know about Drake. Here's the thing: we're talking about next year, and I'm talking about Drake Jackson. I don't know why I'm even bringing up Drake Jackson's name, other than the fact that he's a rookie, because he hasn't even been active for like 2 or 3 games in the last month. So
that's wild.
And I think some of it has to do with the wet conditions, and if they're facing teams, it seems like when the 49ers face teams that they know are going to run at them, that's when they pull him off the field. So I don't think we might not even see Drake Jackson this week.
Probably not seeing him in this one. That makes sense.
Yeah. So Elite Archer, thank you for your super chat. He says Kyle still can't be trusted, 28-3 in 2010. I think he can be trusted. He was up 10-0 when they pulled away. His offense wasn't his offense. Just the 49ers offense on Saturday went up and down the field the entire game. They scored on 8 of their 9 possessions until the last one of the game when they run up the clock. I think he's fine. Yeah.
And it's tough to blame him for the 28-3 debacle when he's just the offensive coordinator. Like 28-3, you should probably win that game.
Yeah, you should. You should. And thank you for the super chat. And on that 28-3 game with that, I do think that he deserves some of it, right?
Criticism for sure.
Yes, when you're down there and you're in a field goal position and you call some pass plays that push you out of field goal position. I think that should be called into question. I think that's bad game management myself, but we'll see. Raphael 569ers put up a couple of good ones there. He says against Jacksonville, the Jags ran for 190 yards. Etienne ran for 102 on his own. We're going to get into the 49ers offense here in just a minute. The one thing that I will say about the 49ers, going back to the defense as a whole, I think the run game is the big one. When they allow teams to run for 99 or more yards, they are 2-4 on the season. Those 4 losses all came in the beginning, though. The last couple of times it's happened, they've been able to pull it out. Difference, I think, is Dallas isn't as bad as the Raiders, but we'll see how that works.
I think that's the important thing to call out is even though we have rectified the trend going into it, those were the closest games. I mean, when you're on an 11-game win streak, it's hard to talk about anything other than winning. But in some of those close games, it could have gone the other way, and it was against teams that could run the ball. That is absolutely why I believe this one will be close. But I will say the vast majority of folks in the chat on my channel tonight in that call-in show were very much aligned with folks that were predicting 2-score victory. So most of the faithful are leaning towards, hey, this offense is unstoppable. It's the number 1 defense, and all of that will show up. I'm with you, Jack, in believing that this one could stay close.
Yeah, and then Rob Rathman brings up, he said hi earlier, sorry I missed you. He says, how about Jordan Willis? And yeah, no, Jordan Willis has been a very good secondary defensive end with that second unit for the 49ers. He's done a very good job with that. There's really no drop off there. So I think the 49ers might even have him signed for next year too.
Nice. I feel like the depth on this team, it just amazes me how many players have stepped up and contributed along the way, regardless of what position we're talking about.
Yeah, this team is extremely deep. That's what we've been talking about all year. So, we talked about the defense. I think we've kind of beat it up. We know what's going on over there and what they need to do. Let's pull this over to the other side. Let's go to the 49ers run offense now against Dallas. And I just got done talking about Raphael's numbers. I wish they were still there so I didn't have to scroll through them. But, I just mentioned how the 49ers, when their big games that they've allowed on the ground, that's when they struggled. It's the same thing with Dallas, though. Dallas, I put that out on Twitter and what I just talked about as far as the 2-4 and all that kind of stuff. And I actually had you and I talk on here all the time, right? And the people that watch the show enough know that if I don't if I don't agree with you, I'll tell you you're wrong. I'll tell you you're full of baloney. And I'm okay with you telling me I'm full of baloney as long as you give me a good reason why. And I had somebody on Twitter, I was telling them that they were full of baloney. And then somebody else that wasn't even a part of the conversation came in and with a really good comment and laid it out. Here's what the Cowboys have done in their 8 worst running games, and they were all over 140 yards, and they're 3-5. So I think it's right there with the 49ers in that term, and that's why I think this is going to be a really fun game.
I believe this is going to be a very fun game as well. And when you get to the 49ers run offense, you just have to get to that point that this sets up everything else. So for the 49ers to get that run game going, it will allow Brock Purdy to do everything that he wants to do, everything Kyle Shanahan wants to do in the pass game. But sticking to the run game, it feels like a prime matchup wherein we're trying to get to 40. And it feels like one of those matchups where the first team to get to 40 carries might actually win this thing because both seem determined to get it to a wide variety of legs in this one that can move the ball. Obviously, we talked about a 3-headed monster over on Dallas's side, but now we're looking at a 3-headed monster for the San Francisco 49ers with Christian McCaffrey running at an incredible clip. I'm always amazed. He looks to me as a slighter framed guy. And given his injury history, that always worried me. But when I watch him run with his shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage, driving through defenders, I'm usually quite surprised by his ability to pick up those additional yards. I think that we will lean extremely heavily on Christian McCaffrey in this one. And oh, by the way, we have a fresh Elijah Mitchell coming in who has been running incredibly hard as well. So it gives us that change up, and then layer in Deebo Samuel. And just watching the fascination on ESPN and folks putting it up on Twitter of the positionless football that Kyle Shanahan truly has now with Christian McCaffrey, and the biggest segment coming up on ESPN NFL Live with Ryan Clark and the other gentleman talking about it. It's just amazing what they can do out of any position because of Juice, Kittle, Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey. It is wild to me what they can do. And I look at the offensive line going up against Dallas, who I feel like running directly at Micah Parsons is going to be an advantage. So I think that this one for the 49ers works out in our favor. It should be a focus going in, and I hope that we hit that 40 number.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up that ESPN clip, because I saw it and it was, where they're talking about 21. They said 21 about 50 times, but it's the 21 format, the 21 personnel for the 49ers is their best formation. And you look at it and you see what they can do when everybody's healthy. And it's wild, especially when, you've got Kyle Juszczyk. He can play fullback. He can line up wide as a receiver. He's tight end. He can do everything that a tight end can do. He's probably the 49ers' second best tight end on the team anyway. You got Deebo, right. And you've got Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Deebo Samuel is a receiver who moonlights as a running back. Christian McCaffrey is a running back who moonlights as a receiver. The only guy that kind of just plays one position and just does his own thing is Brandon Ayuk. He's the only one that doesn't float all over the place. Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, they just play tight end and wide receiver. Everybody else is just a bunch of wherever they want to go, that's where they line up. I mean, I know that's not the way it works, but that's what it seems like, and that's where it really becomes difficult for the defense. Like, they're in 21 personnel. That's a run. That's typically a heavy defensive personnel you're going to put out there, but they have so many guys. Right? Yeah, it's your base. So how are you going to defend that? That's going to be one of the interesting things to watch. Does Dallas come out and they try to run their big nickel where they have three safeties on the field at the same time? Do they try to, because they're probably not going to be in there. They don't really run three linebackers. Usually in that kind of a situation, it's going to be three safeties. And so again, I think if they're in a three safety look, that gives the 49ers an advantage because of the bodies that are in there. And I just think that I do believe that the 49ers are going to have success when it comes to running the ball against the Cowboys. It's not going to be a down in, down out 5 yards, 4 yards thing, but they're going to have chunk plays like you've seen all along.
And those two that you mentioned that don't, the receivers or pass catchers, I should say, in George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk that don't moonlight as running backs are still two of arguably the best at their position in run blocking. So even though they don't carry the ball, they're phenomenal in that setup because Brandon Ayuk is not afraid to get in there and block. George Kittle is pancaking fools on the regular. So add that into these versatile position players like McCaffrey, like Deebo, like Juszczyk, who can play multiple positions, and it is just unfair for defenses. And I want to go back to something that you said when we were talking about Dallas, that is this run game for the 49ers is potentially our best defense against Dallas's ability to run the ball. Controlling time of possession, tilting that in our favor, getting 7 points instead of 3. All of these things add up to what I believe the 49ers have been able to do against opponents in this 11-game win streak, and that is break them by the end of the game. It may be close early. It may start out and seem like, oh man, this is going to be down to the wire. And some of these games have been. Don't get me wrong. I think this one is going to be close. But when you watch the physicality of the 49ers and you watch it wear on the opponent through 4 quarters, I see a notable difference. and getting the run game going feels like you can snatch their souls by keeping it marching down the field. And that feels like what we need to do in order to get this 10, 14-point margin of victory.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've got to be able to just, I think when you look at this game, they just need, if they just go out and play the way that they've played over the last 6 weeks, if they 7 weeks, I guess it is, right? 6 starts, 7 games. If they just continue to play the way they played since that Miami game, and they just keep doing those things, they should win this game. They should be able to score enough points. And that's where, like I was talking about when it comes to the defensive side, right? I think the 49ers' best defense in this game might be its offense, because they've been able to keep the ball away from Dallas. And then if they can get up by a couple of scores, when I say a couple of scores, I'm not saying 10, I'm saying 14. If they can get up by 2 touchdowns on Dallas, that really plays into their favor. And I think this running game is going to be solid for them. I think they're going to make some big plays there. And if they can get that passing game going, that's when the play action starts up. And we've seen that play action stuff even be explosive with this team.
Absolutely. If the Niners get cooking like that, it will be a fun game to watch. That's when we've been able to truly dismantle teams, when we're able to possess the ball, get ahead, and then allow those guys to pin their ears back along the defensive line and get after the quarterback, force them into those errant throws, begin the turnovers. Everything just begins to spiral for the opposing team. And it's been so dramatic that they're losing the games the following week. To me, that is the ultimate exclamation point on that idea of wrecking a team by the time you get to the end of 4 quarters.
Absolutely, because they're just so physical and dominant on it. And let's pass it over. Let's talk a little bit about the offense too, because there was a good comment over there. It's a good time to kind of transition into it.
Love it.
We have, where was it? It was just up here in a second. Raphael 5629ers, member of the toolbox. He says, is Dallas going to respect the rookie or just blitz them? And when we're talking about the 49ers passing game here against Dallas, if this happens, if Dallas decides that they're going to blitz Brock Purdy, I say it's advantage 49ers. I think for Dallas, they are better off playing with their front, rushing 7, playing defense, and forcing him to throw the ball into tight windows than to blitz and give him one-on-one opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild that Miami did that to him right when he got in, right? It was, hey, you got your third stringer coming in. We're going to test him because he's fresh. We're going to give him some pressure. His ability to deliver strikes when there is pressure coming into his chest immediately before a hit from a defensive lineman, I think is what so instantaneously endeared him to Kyle Shanahan. You heard Kyle Shanahan talk about that as a trait that he appreciated in CJ Beathard, right? It's something that he sees as mental toughness and necessary coming in. I'll be interested in this game to see if Brock Purdy looks a little flat, as it seemed that he did. Maybe flat is the wrong word, but he struggled early against Seattle. However, he's not struggled in totality. I mean, you look at his games since coming in and taking over as a starter, 112 passer rating since taking over, leads the entire NFL by a wide margin in that clip. So even in that game against Seattle, where it looked like, hey, some adversity to begin with, some struggles coming out, he kept calm, cool, collected, and by the end of that one was cooking yet again. So I feel like he has the ability to drag himself out of any rough spots that he may get into. But I absolutely would rather that we start strong. My contention is last week against Seattle, were we facing stiffer competition because of the way it felt the team in its entirety, and Brock Purdy in particular, struggled a little bit early. I thought a better opponent would have gotten up bigger, and that would have presented a challenge for the 49ers. If we come out flat against Dallas, that would be my fear. So coming out and immediately and being on the same page with the offense, being able to lay some strikes in there, not missing any of the open looks, those feel like very relevant components to having a successful passing day for Brock Purdy and the 49ers passing offense.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, real quick before I go into my answer to you, Kevin, I see your comments. I've noticed it a couple of times. I'll take a look at that for you as far as getting the replay, having the comment section show up, and that I'll see what I can do. So I want to make sure I hit you on that so you don't think we're not paying attention. In terms of what you're saying, though, you know, it was a little bit of a struggle in the first quarter, first half, all the way through in that first half of the game. But even with that struggle, the 49ers put up 16 points. I don't see a team coming in here. If they can put up 16 points, I think you're still going to be in every ball game because I don't
That's
really
a
don't
fair
see
point.
I don't see a team scoring more than 21 on this defense and a half, other than maybe Kansas City. I just don't see it. So you're still in it. It's not like it's that bad. That just one of the main things, though, before we go too far, we'll get back to just Brock Purdy as themselves. But when you talk about the 49ers passing game, I want to kind of transition this over and look at that, because I think this is a big one to look at here, because you've got a 49ers pass offense, which has allowed its quarterback to get sacked only 5.57% of the time, 5.6 we rounded up. That's one of the better numbers in the NFL. They're facing a Dallas pass rush that gets to the quarterback roughly 8.4% of the time, second only to Philadelphia. So I think that's where this is going to be very interesting. I don't think they're doing it with the blitz. I think they're doing it mostly with just rushing four.
Interesting. I mean, that will be a big component to this one, is whether we keep Brock Purdy upright or whether Dallas continues that trend of being able to get to the quarterback. It feels as though the number of offensive weapons on the offense greatly bodes towards the 49ers' success in this. I saw the stat of, it's measured that at time of reception, these receivers have X amount of separation. And the 49ers have 4 pass catchers in McCaffrey, Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk that all have at least close to 3, or 3 of the 4 have more than 3 yards of separation when they catch it. No other team in the league has more than 2 players of that caliber. And so with that many options available, it just feels simpler to get the ball out, that you're going to have someone that is open. If you are dealing with a ton of pressure from Dallas, you have a ton of different guys now that can be that outlet. McCaffrey being the end all be all that we just haven't had to this point. Truly feels like the unlock of this offense is when all else fails, a little dump off to McCaffrey is no longer a loss of 2 or a loss of 3. It can turn into a freaking 25-yard gain out of nowhere, man. And that truly feels like a deflating moment for the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at this offense and the way that they do their stuff, I'm think that this is going to be a good matchup for the 49ers when it comes to their offense against the defense. And one of the positions that some people might be worried about is Mike McGlinchey against Micah Parsons, because Parsons has had, he's the big pass rusher. McGlinchey kind of struggles with that kind of pass rusher. But I was listening to the radio way too much. I spent way too much time in my car. So I get to hear everybody talking about this stuff. So I'm hearing a lot of stuff from the Dallas folks, which is good, right? Especially for me to be able to know what I'm talking about and not sound like a goofball. And he was talking, they were saying today that Micah Parsons this season has rushed approximately about 65% of the time off of the defense's right side. So that means, guess who he's going to be matched up with? Not Mike McGlinchey. He's going to be matched up with the big guy at number 71. That's where he primarily rushes from, is from that side. In recent weeks, it's been all the way up to 81%, they said. So I we'll see if they decide that they're going to change it up, but I think we're mostly going to see him matched up against Trent Williams. And I think it's DeMarcus Lawrence is number 90 for the Cowboys. I think he'll be the one that's going to be matched up more on the other side. DeMarcus Lawrence. I think you'll see more from Lawrence against McGlinchey, which is still a tough battle. But you got to remember, this is an offense against this defense last year without McGlinchey. They were able to do a pretty good job, and they were able to score 23 points on this Dallas defense, which isn't much different this year than they were a year ago. And they put up 23 points, no Christian McCaffrey, no Mike McGlinchey, and playing the second half with Jimmy Garoppolo with his arm hanging off of his shoulder because he injured his shoulder early in the second half.
It's wild. And I look at this offense coming in, a Dallas defense that, to your point, not much has changed. A 49ers offense that is significantly changed, right? An upgrade at quarterback, particularly an upgrade over a half dead arm Jimmy Garoppolo. And Christian McCaffrey, what he has done to this offense, it just feels like too much. The ability to play John Stockton in this offense for Brock Purdy, distribute the rock, get it to Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle setting new records with 11 touchdowns, right? 7 of those, I think, coming from the games with Brock Purdy, shattering his old record of 6. Deebo Samuel coming alive with the 6 catches for 133 yards last week. Brandon Ayuk with his first 1,000-yard receiving season. All of these things in combination with the passer rating that Brock Purdy has held since taking over feel like this offense is cooking, averaging 35 points a game, which is where the Niners have been at in the games where you have both Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey, is absurd. It's far and away the best average within the NFL, obviously a small sample size, but above what Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes is able to do. My hope is that this passing offense is just too much for this Dallas defense, that they give up yards, and as long as we are prudent with the football, don't turn it over, it feels like we could have another game where we're putting up close to 500 yards of offense.
See how that goes. But I will say, because I think this offense is going to be good. I'm not predicting 30 points. I'm not predicting 40 points. I don't know about 500 yards. All those kind of things. I do think that they're going to have success. I will say, the question came up from Raphael 5629ers about how many rushing attempts will the 49ers have. We'll find that out. But what I would say to that is, here's the golden number for the 49ers, 30. When they hit 30, they are 29-2 under Kyle Shanahan. So if they can get to 30 carries, the likelihood that they win is going to be very high. There's a couple of numbers here that work in the 49ers' favor. Get to 30 runs, you win. The fact that they have 7 days of rest playing against a team that has 5 days of rest, looked at that, and in that situation, the team that had 7 days of rest is 26-9 in those situations. So that plays into the 49ers' favor there as well. There's a lot of things that go in this direction that favor the 49ers. But I want to ask you this. I know you talked about the Brock Purdy and that separation that his receivers have. And this has been a talking point. It's going to a little bit away from this game, but just Brock Purdy in general. It's interesting, right? How it doesn't matter who the quarterback is in San Francisco. They're never good enough. It doesn't matter if it's Jimmy Garoppolo. It doesn't matter if it's whoever it is. In this day and age, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it all goes back. Look at what we've seen. All that separation is due to what? It's not because it's the quarterback. You have one guy who says that Brock Purdy has regressed since his first start. You have another guy who is a 49ers guy say that, it's just so wide open. It's easy to make these throws and all that kind of stuff. He didn't say it directly like that, but he says that's why I don't think that you close the door on Trey Lance and all that implies.
Right.
I look, and I just kind of want to get your feeling on some of the overarching narrative on Brock Purdy before we get into our predictions.
To me, the overarching narrative is, the way I view it, he did need to pass a lot of those tests. I was one of those people that week in, week out, I saw a new opportunity for Brock Purdy to assert himself, for him to show that he belonged, for him to look comfortable within this offense and give me faith that going forward, he was going to continue to have success. Every single test that's been in front of him, he has passed. A lot of those he has passed with flying colors. To the point of operating this offense successfully, I just don't think many people understand the complexities of a Kyle Shanahan offense. So the simple ability to be able to hit those open receivers, I don't think is a simple ability. And it's why Kyle is so enamored with the way in which Brock Purdy is able to hit him. I will say that the arm strength continues to be I would say the weakest part of the game, but you have swayed me over to the side of believing that it's not a hindrance to his ability to make the throws he needs to make on the field. You see it occasionally with a slightly underthrown deep ball, and one of those may come back to bite us, but we don't take those shots with any consistency to where I think it is a detriment to the 49ers' ability. We still have the Yak brothers, and the ability to put the ball on those individuals is what's going to have the most amount of success, the most bearing on success for the San Francisco 49ers. What I've seen of Brock Purdy, other than missing a few open receivers, which you cannot hit them all, is an ability to find the man, put the ball in his hands, in position to take off running. To me, it feels like a sustainable model. I do not see anything where I'm skeptical of Brock Purdy's ability to continue having success.
I agree. And I find all of this stuff to be quite interesting. I had, I talked about it on Tuesday on the Hammer and Nail show. I think the belief or somebody saying that Brock Purdy's regressed since week 1 is one of the stupidest things I've heard on YouTube in a long time. And that was on Twitter, but it came from somebody that's on YouTube. Because it hasn't happened. He is playing at a very high level. I watched a clip today of Chris Sims, who there's some people who are well known in the 49ers Twitter sphere, even on YouTube, who swear by what Chris Sims says. And I'll tell you one thing, Chris Sims was dead ass wrong on that clip that he talked about today on one of the plays in which he said that Brock Purdy missed an open receiver, which was Brandon Ayuk running a crosser. Instead, he checks it down to Deebo Samuel. I can guarantee you that if you're watching that film with the 49ers coaching staff, they will tell you that pass went to the right spot because they're running the concept they're running. They got a vertical route over with the flat. Simple read. You got the deep guy, so you hit your back foot, read deep to short because you got the deep guy. He's opening it up, and you want to make sure he's, you're checking him first.
Right.
If he's covered, then you go to the flat defender. If the flat defender is in the flat, you throw the over route to the receiver, and it's a big gain. If he drops back, you throw the check down, and you take what you can get. That was a 1st and 10 play. He hits his back foot. The deep route's covered. He looks to the flat. The flat defender's dropped. The flat defender is dropping. If he throws the over route to Brandon Ayuk, it's either probably going to be a pick or Brandon Ayuk is going to get lit up because that guy is dropping right into where Ayuk is going until Purdy turns and separates his hands and starts to throw the flat. And then that's when he drives, and that's why it's a 7-yard completion. Good play. 1st and 10, you get a completion. Now we're on to 2nd and 7, or 2nd and 3, excuse me. They just have a bad run play on 2nd down. They don't gain anything, and then the play call is kind of a bad one on 3rd down, so you don't pick it up. But it's a good play. And I'll say this. When I looked at it, the first time that I went through it when I was looking at the film, I made the same mistake that Sims did. The more I watched it, because you see the 49ers run that same concept over and over and over again, I understood what the read was supposed to be, and I understood what was going on, especially when you slow it down and you watch the fact that flat defender, he is dropping right in there. So what does Kyle Shanahan do? Kyle Shanahan has recognized that. The next time they go to call that route, they don't call the play action. They call it as a straight drop back. That flat defender jumps the flat because it doesn't look the same to him this time. And they hit a big gain to Brandon Ayuk over the middle. So, yes, Brock Purdy is a part of a product of the system. But at the same time, he is running that system at a very high level. He is running this system at a level which we haven't seen from a 49ers quarterback in the past.
Right.
He just, and especially in the postseason, performance that he put, even with the struggles in the first quarter, his performance was the best performance we've seen from a 49er quarterback in the postseason since probably Kaepernick against the Packers at Candlestick. Maybe,
running for 181, baby.
Yeah, and I think he threw for like 270 or 300 and whatever. Is just ridiculous stuff that night. Or it could even have been 2013 on the road. I know the numbers weren't big, but doing what you did doing what he did to the Green Bay and then the next week against the number 1 seed in
right.
Carolina, all that stuff. So, and what I'm saying, you know who I'm talking about. So that was just a tremendous performance. And the last piece that I'll say is, if it was this easy, why have we not seen it sooner? If it's just about the system, why haven't we seen it sooner? And that's all I have to really say on Brock Purdy. I think the kid's playing great. He has a good head on his shoulders. I'd like to hear him. I liked what he had to say today. He was asked about the one thing that I worry about with Brock Purdy is the pressure in his face. He likes to spin out to his left. I don't like that. I thought he'd missed that. We're talking about misses with Brock Purdy. I think that was maybe one of his biggest misses was rolling out to his left and throwing the ball away late in the first half instead of stepping up into the pocket and running.
Right. It was so clear on the broadcast that stepping up into the pocket would have been the play.
Yeah. And so I think, and he even talked about that, and he understands that he's got to be better at that and all those kind of things. And they were working on it at practice. And he just seems like a dude who gets it. And he just seems like a guy that you can coach you can just coach him like crazy. Yes. And he's not gonna get upset. He's not gonna take it personal. He's just gonna learn, and he's gonna keep doing what he's doing, but he's gonna try to incorporate it into what he's, how he's playing. It's not gonna slow him down at all. And we're going to find out how it plays because he's going to be playing against this Dallas team is the best team the 49ers have played in the NFC this season.
I'm with you on that. We are going to find out a whole heck of a lot. And I think there's a reason that Kyle Shanahan seems to be so enamored with Brock Purdy, that he is a great fit within this. And folks that want to say, oh, it's all about Kyle Shanahan, I think are failing to realize how important that pairing is within the NFL. Take a Dan Marino. Take him off of the Dolphins and throw him on the 49ers with Bill Walsh, and you're telling me he still doesn't have a Super Bowl? I don't buy it at all, right? It is the pairing of talent with the appropriate scheme, with the appropriate coach. It's those factors together that lead to the ultimate success. And what we're seeing right now with Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan feels like a very cohesive pairing between quarterback and skill set and what the offensive coordinator, play caller is looking to do in the offense.
Yep, absolutely. Just like Joe Montana and Bill Walsh, right? Bill Walsh,
Mr. 16.
Bill Walsh. He Joe Montana was the ultimate system quarterback, right?
Perfect.
So we'll see how it goes. And yeah, I'm comparing Brock Purdy to Joe Montana because I can. I listened to, like I said, I listened to a lot of stuff, and Greg Cosell was on KMBR talking about how a longtime coach in the NFL said the same thing to him about Brock Purdy, that he reminds him of Joe Montana. There's a lot of that in his game. I don't think his arm is as strong as Montana's, but Montana just had he was a quiet guy, but he had that fire, and I think we're seeing a lot of that Brock Purdy. So we'll see what happens. I could be completely off in base, and he just falls on his face on Sunday, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either, my friend.
Let's get to it. We're a little over an hour, so time for some predictions. Robert, I will let you go first.
I appreciate it. And just to throw it in there, I think we may have a super chat from Kevin that we may not have gotten to. So I'm going to give you my prediction while you find that one. I think there are some factors that go into this one. You mentioned it already. The 2 extra days of rest is huge in this matchup. The 49ers should get the physical edge because of that. I will say there are a couple of things going against the Niners, against their favor. DeMeco Ryans' interviews this week. I know he says that he's able to compartmentalize it and put the Cowboys first. I'm a little less than thrilled that there are 4 interviews on the books for this week. I get it. I want DeMeco to have that head coaching gig. I don't want to get in the way of that, but I do think it works against them. And then the Cowboys wanting revenge for last year. Nick Wagner of ESPN was bringing it up today in the locker room. He asked Trent Williams about that now infamous photo, right, of him giving the bird to those couple of Cowboys fans, asked George Kittle about it. His quote was, "It's fantastic." Honestly, that was the best reaction possible, just laughing in their faces. I love that. I know that probably gives the Cowboys, I know that probably the Cowboys have seen that too, and they'll probably use that as motivation, and I can't wait to play football on Sunday. I just love how this is getting ratcheted up. This should be a physical, phenomenal game on Sunday. I think that talent wins out in the end. The 49ers have a deeper roster that over the course of 60 minutes, that will bear out. I think it's going to be close. I have the Niners winning this one 31-27.
31-27 from Rob. Okay, I like it. I do. This is one that, as the week's gone on, I think I've come to my senses a little bit more. I think early on in the week, if you had asked me on Monday or Tuesday, I probably would have said probably more like Tuesday. If you'd asked me on Tuesday, I probably would have told you that the 49ers are going to lose this game, that it was going to be a Cowboys victory. That's where
I'm glad we didn't have a show on Tuesday, Jack.
I know. Tell me about it. I'm glad we didn't too. It was just something, but at that point, I was more looking at the 49ers struggles. I wasn't looking at the Dallas struggles at that point. And so I was looking at the things that give the 49ers trouble, which is a lot of what Dallas does. And I hadn't looked at some of the things that give Dallas trouble, which is what a lot of the 49ers do. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see that whole matchup play out. And really quick, I found that super chat, so I'll give him my prediction. It makes sense. Kevin, thank you for your super chat again. He says Purdy and CMC is just as confusing to the playoffs as it is to us. I say that liberally. It's all about confusion with Debo and Kittle and the rotation. I agree with you. That's part of the whole reason why they're so good in that 21 personnel. It's so confusing as to everything that's going on, because you got Deebo Samuel in the backfield and Christian McCaffrey as a wide receiver, and then you're faking an RPO to Deebo Samuel, but you're throwing the slant to Christian McCaffrey for a gain of 17, and vice versa. And you got Deebo running for 22 yards on a sweep, and then next thing you know, you've got Christian McCaffrey running 68 yards on a sweep. It's what the hell are you doing? It's hard to defend. And I think you look at this Cowboys, and again, just listen to a lot of Cowboy people, and not even radio people, but just the TV, some of the writers as well. And one of the things that he was saying, the Cowboys struggle with the outside run game, and that happens to be where some of the 49ers strength is in that outside run game. So if they're able to have some success to the outside, that's going to be great. If Dallas decides that they're going to get after him and really work to get out there to stop those outside runs, guess what? That's when you get the cutback lanes and all that stuff with Christian McCaffrey and maybe even Jordan Mason for a carry or two here and there, because that's what he does best. So
yes, sir.
I look at this, and there's a lot of reasons to pick Dallas. I think at the end of the day, the 49ers having an extra day of rest. I know that last year Tampa Bay played on Sunday. The Rams played on Monday. The game was played in Tampa the following week, and the Rams won, but that was also a Sunday game instead of a Saturday game. And I just think this is also the other part that's different about that is the Cowboys. It's not just that they're playing on a short week. This is going to be the fourth week in a row they've gone on the road.
Wow, so I think that adds up. I think that's where on top of it. And I just really think that this game is going to go to the 49ers. It's going to be tight. If you're a 49ers fan and you're watching this and you're getting yourself ready for what it's going to be like on Sunday, I'd say put on your best adult diapers, because that's how tight this is going to be in the first half. I think at halftime, I think you're going to be, not very comfortable. I think the second half, that's where the 49ers ability to come out and dominate that, like you're talking about, Rob, the 49ers talent, I think that shows up in the second half. That depth shows up in the second half, and that's where they start to pull away. So I think for me, I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring. I'm going to say 49ers by a score of 27-23. I like it. We've got that same margin of victory, just a few less points in this one in your score prediction there. I think it's going to be an exciting, thrilling matchup Sunday, and I'm here for that, man, as long as we get the dub.
That's right. 49ers got to get a win so that we can then either watch them play at home on Sunday against the Giants or out in Philly. Either way, it'd be great to see them play one more game at least.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, Rob, for coming on. I always appreciate it. It's always fun.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
What have you got coming up? Do you have anything coming up on your channel between now and game day?
I don't have anything specifically planned, but look for a show to pop up. So go ahead and follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and hit the bell notification. In my community tab, I'll put out a notification and on Twitter stating that I'll have a show. If not, at a bare minimum, we'll have a pregame show prior to the matchup against Dallas and a postgame afterward.
Perfect. And it's the same thing here, guys. So, I really appreciate everybody watching over here on my channel. Raphael5629ers always does such a great job for me. He's a member of the Toolbox. So if you want to become a member of the channel, you can do that. But like he says, like and subscribe. Make sure you're getting over to Rob's channel. It's really easy. At Rob Shoe here on YouTube. Make sure you become a member. Make sure you also subscribe to his channel. As for over here, you'll see me. I'll have a show tomorrow. I'll do a pregame show on Sunday. Do a postgame as well. See how that feels at Levi Stadium after the game. So keep it locked in. And as information comes, I always try to make sure I put an update on there. Even if it's not a long show, I'll give you guys a 2 to 5 minute update on different things from here and there. So I want to say thank you to Rob once again. Thank you to everybody. There's some names over here in this comment section I've never seen before. Maybe you followed Rob over here, which would be awesome. If you guys can do me a favor before you leave, do what Raphael says here. Hit that like button, because hitting the like button is what's best for all of us when it comes to YouTube. And hit that subscribe button. And when you hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell notification so you see every time we go live or every time we post content. There's always good stuff. And just want to say thanks to everybody that does that. So, Rob, have a good rest of your Thursday. Everybody over in the comment section, you too as well. Thanks for watching. Keep it locked in here to the Jackhammer channel for all your Fringers breaking news and updates. Take care, everybody. Cheers.